start with questions about how the district is responding to the ever-changing COVID-19 situation in South Dakota. Remote learning is it to start. Can you kind of what that looks like for students?
Yeah, I think that's Shelley. So Shelley, let me begin by rambling just a little bit and see if I answer your question. Thanks for chuckling. The first thing I would say is it is truly a work in progress. Remote learning is. I think we are prepared to implement remote learning, but I wouldn't say for a minute that it is a replacement for what we do in our classrooms on a daily basis. I'm getting quite a bit of feedback.
Yes. What is that?
Maybe we could mute the lines, and when I'm done speaking, there we go. Thank you. What we're doing in terms of remote learning is in no way a replacement for what we do on a daily basis in our classroom. But I think given the situation that we're in, we had to do the best that we could do to help engage our students in learning as we move forward. So the remote learning, and we chose that name on purpose, whereas you might see some calling it e-learning or online learning. We have a number of kids, and we don't know the number yet. We have a number of kids who won't have the opportunity to learn technologically. They won't be able to have an e-learning option or an online learning option. And so for those kids, we still want them to have an opportunity to learn remotely, and we'll be providing that option to them beginning tomorrow as we get materials actually to them and to their houses. So the expectation, I would say today, we have expectations today for our staff, and part of that expectation today is that we contact every student and every family in our school district. That might be from a teacher, it might be from an administrator, but we expect to contact everybody today. Again, that might be text, that might be email, that might be a phone call, but there should be contact today. And then we actually have a series of questions that we're asking the students, beginning with, how are you doing and how is your family doing? So hopefully we'll get a pretty good indication of accessibility. It's one thing to have a device. It's another thing to have connectivity. And then in those homes where either a device or a connectivity are absent, provide materials that are not electronic in nature. So we'll begin that process. We will no doubt learn as we go. And I would remind everybody that learning as we go is part of the learning process. So we will all be learning as we go here.
Dr. Maher, when will remote learning actually begin for the children?
Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. And I would tell you that in some instances it's already started. I know even though there was no expectation for teacher and student contact last week, I know there was a significant amount of that going on. We had teachers who went above and beyond immediately and did their best not to let that learning process get any more interrupted than it already has. So it never stopped in some cases, but it will. The expectation is that tomorrow it begins in earnest, and until further notice, that's how we'll deliver. That'll be our methodology for delivering instruction in the Sioux Falls School District.
Doctor, when you say till further notice, any idea when that will be? I mean, is the expectation that this will continue perhaps to the end of the school year?
Well, I think that's Ray. Ray, it wouldn't surprise me if that is the case. Although my crystal ball just isn't clear enough yet to make that decision. I would tell you this: I'm anxious to hear what the governor has to say yet today about extending our time away, or we're prepared to talk about a significant increase in time away from school that we will decide as a school district soonest tonight.
I've heard districts doing things like transforming school buses into mobile Wi-Fi units, buying hotspots for whoever may need it, partnering with nonprofits like the United Way. I've heard other districts, doing those handheld hard packets and having to wait maybe 3 days before they can turn grades around to make sure hard copies are sanitized. What's the district doing to really kind of help those families who don't have internet access? I know you mentioned it's kind of there's a learning curve to it, but what are maybe some of more of those tangible elements of this process?
Yeah, that's a good question, Shelley. Let me start by saying what we did. One of the things we did last week was we approximated our summer program for feeding kids in our community. And one of the things that we noticed immediately was that's going to be an incomplete option as we go forward. So we put together a plan, and we devised a plan that we hatched, for lack of a better term, on Friday of last week, where we will actually be out. We'll utilize our school buses. We'll utilize some district personnel, and we're going to put things that kids need. How's that? Just a high-level phrase. Things that kids need on that bus, and we'll have those buses mobilized tomorrow. There are two things that I see happening here. One is school supplies will be delivered to kids. Now, school supplies might be technology. It could be devices. It could be packets of paperwork. It could be anything that promotes the remote learning concept that we have going as a district. We will also expand the number of places where kids can pick up food in the district tomorrow, and that information will be on our website already. Yeah, and so what that includes is the 6 locations that we had last week, and then we're also delivering food to principals, and principals are delivering food to those areas of highest food insecurity in our school system.
Dr. Maher, did I hear you say you were going to use the buses to deliver supplies, technology, etc., to the various homes in the district?
Supplies, technology, and food, Mark. And then to the homes, what we'll do is we'll actually deliver them to the school. Then personnel at the school, led by the principal, will get those distributed in their school communities, in their neighborhoods.
And Doctor, if this is till further notice, how do you gauge progress of learning? Do you say, okay, we're going to start from when school is last in the building, and then use that as our model for the fall, where are kids at now, and that's where we start in the fall? I mean, there's expectation to learn now, but how will you gauge any of that progress?
Yeah, Ray, that's such a good question. I think the biggest thing that I would say is this. Right now, I'm not worried about the state assessment, and thank goodness we've been given a reprieve from that. I'm also not all that worried about our semester exams unless things change for the better immediately. Rather, the learning that I think is going to go on right now will be learning that is not assessed, or at least I don't know how to assess it. And by that I mean we're going to be figuring out new things together. We're going to work on resilience. We're going to work on how to adjust to a new environment. We're going to work on how to adapt to our new reality. I am not smart enough to know how to assess those areas, but I do know coping with those things promotes growth, promotes development, and promotes learning. And that's what we'll be most focused on. I won't be worried about A, B, C's, or F's for the foreseeable future.
Dr. Maher, I'm sorry if this got covered. I had to step away, but can you give us an update on how the district is distributing lunches and other meals?
Yep, we just went through that.
Okay, that's fine.
But that's okay. I'll be happy to do it again. So let me, first of all, start with historically, what we've done is, I didn't say this before, kids being hungry in our community when school's not in session, that didn't come to us with the coronavirus. That's been a thing that's happened for a long time in our school system and in our city. As a school district, we've attempted to dig into that food insecurity by having 6 schools open in the summer and providing lunches to those students in the summer. Last week, when we were closed for the week, we started with that plan. And as a result of that, what we thought was this plan is incomplete. And so what we did was we immediately started figuring out how do we reach out beyond those 6 buildings. Beginning tomorrow, and this was decided, I think it's important to know, this was decided by the school district last week and determined determined fully last Friday that we would be expanding those pickup points this week, beginning tomorrow, and that will be by providing not only the 6 locations that we've used in the past, but also expanding drop-offs by using our buses to get food and other school supplies to our many of our schools in the district, and then the principals will be responsible for a distribution from those sites. Some of those will be delivered to high-density areas, apartment complexes, etc., and some of those will just be accessible to students at those buildings. But we will have tremendously increased accessibility to food in our school system. And we're still providing food to any student, not just to students on free and reduced price lunch.
Doctor, you mentioned go ahead.
When it comes to children with disabilities or children with language barriers, district ensuring these students receive an equal education during these changing times.
Yeah, well, let me tell you that is a challenge. That is a real challenge, and it's a real issue. We have, as you know, more than 4,000 kids on an IEP. I remind everybody that IEP stands for Individualized Education Program, and never has the individualized portion of that been more important than it is right now. And I'll say those things from a broad perspective, and I'll turn it over to Deb Millenberg-Wilson, who is sitting here with us, who is really our lead person in that regard.
Good afternoon. Today, special education professionals are having one-to-one conversations with parents about the goals and services on that child's IEP and how we can remotely deliver some of that during this. Parents and those professionals will come to some agreement on where we start tomorrow and Wednesday, and then there'll have to be ongoing communication over the days and time ahead, however long this lasts, to continue to, A, assure children are making progress, and B, to see if the plan needs to be modified based on what's happening in that individual child's circumstance. So we have special education teachers, speech-language therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists. Before I came in here, I was reviewing some things that have been put together by adapted physical education teachers on exercises that could be going on for kids. So that's happening from all those professionals around each child. I think I would echo what Dr. Maher said in that it is our goal to make this individualized and to support the goals in a child's IEP. I don't believe it will be the same as when children and and the professionals are face to face. But we're going to give this our best shot to support everyone.
Speak to the quick turnaround the district has had to do in terms of planning. You went from being in school to not being in school, planning meals, to revamping the delivery method. Geez, within a week, probably. Can you comment on?
What?
Yeah.
I'm trying to formulate them. I've got a bunch of them running through my mind that I'm trying to put into coherent sentences. Really, Ray, you described it really, really well. We knew the COVID virus was out there, right? And we knew that likely we were going to be impacted by the virus at some point in time. We had even had beginning conversations on what does remote learning look like? What does this mean for our students on IEPs? How can we intentionally make sure that our professional development is where we want it to be? Well, we felt good about where it was. Boy, just a few more days or a few more weeks would really help us out. And then all of a sudden we were closed. And all of this, and when I say all of a sudden, I agree 100% with the decision. So that is not an indictment on the decision to close. Rather, it's what we needed to do. It was our social responsibility to close. So then it was, what do we do now? I would say that there are a couple of things that have been great to see, and I think you've seen it in many, many arenas, not just in the school district. When you look at our city and you look at how they've mobilized and you look at what the mayor and his folks have done, I as a citizen of Sioux Falls, I just feel great about the response and what has happened. And we've learned from them that it's working hard and using common sense and using the resources available to you to do the best you can. And I think that's what we've done. And I think every day we realize that there's something new that we could be doing to make this experience even better than what it is. That's why I think you see remote learning this week is different than what we had anticipated it would look like just a week ago. It's why our food distribution program is different this week than it was last week. I suspect that those things will be different next week as well. And that's very much at a macro level. If you look at it at a micro level, I can't imagine how much our teachers will grow from today to March 30th to April 15th. Because while I think their keys to success are going to be the same, that's building relationships with kids and engaging with kids, the methodology that they use to do that is going to be different. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. And Ray, I'm just kind of rambling, but that's really been how it's gone for us. I would tell you, I've been here 5 years, and most of the folks that I work with in terms of planning on a daily basis right now are folks that I've worked with for all 5 years. I would tell you that I don't know that we've ever been closer than we are right now, because there's no time for egos to get in the way, and you just got to say, I think we should do this, and somebody else immediately says yes or no and why. We come to a conclusion and we move on, and that's how it has to be. And it's been, in my opinion, a great working environment. That might be my opinion because I have the last say, but it truly has been a great environment to get things done. We hope that manifests itself into opportunities for kids. And I've said this, and I apologize if I've said it to this group before, but learning the Pythagorean theorem right now is not our biggest goal. And that's hard for an old math teacher to say. But rather it's, how do I adapt? How do I adjust? How do I persevere? How do I overcome? How do I learn to navigate this new reality? And that's all learning. It's just not learning that's assessed in our conventional ways.
Well, speaking of this learning process, there are a couple of big things outside of remote learning that I was curious about. One being the process for redistricting. Community input meetings have kind of been put on hold until further notice. And then whether ongoing school projects or construction projects, as well as the construction of the 2 new schools, will be delayed in any way.
Let me address both of the issues that I think you brought up there, Shelley. Number one, the only thing I would change from what you originally said is the community meetings haven't kind of been changed. They've been drastically changed, except right now I can't tell you what they've been changed to. I don't know what that will look like. We will, this week, have missed our 3rd, I think, scheduled community meeting, and it will still be our intent to make all of those up. I know I've said this before, but I don't know that I've said it to everybody. That's a good news, bad news scenario. The bad news is everybody's had to put their thoughts on hold, including the school district. And there were many community members who were prepared to let us know what was on their mind, good or bad. I'm not naive enough to think some of that was stuff I wouldn't want to hear, but that's also part of the process. So people were prepared to talk to us about that, and we were prepared to listen. And so the bad news is that's on hold. The good news is we have plenty of time for that. We weren't up against a deadline. And I'm still hopeful we can get that done by June 30th, simply because that's my last day in office. And I would really love for Dr. Stavum to have that issue complete before she has to work in the office. So that would be my goal. But even if for some reason we can't accomplish that, we still have time. So I feel okay on that topic in terms of we've got time to get that right. I just wish I knew when we could get back to it. In the second issue of the construction, will the coronavirus impact construction? I think it already is a little bit. The workforce, to the best of my knowledge, a week ago, when I think of the 2 new schools are already under construction, I think we were still in very good shape in terms of having the workers necessary for continuing that project. As the week went on, we're finding that maybe some of the supplies and the supply chain might be interrupted. Today, I don't know that it's interrupted substantially. That would cause us delays, but certainly it's got us a little uneasy. Because we just don't know when that ends. Sticking with construction, I want to remind everybody that while we have 2 new constructions going on, we're prepared for several remodels this summer. And depending upon what happens here, any compression of that summertime when kids and staff would not be in a building will be problematic for those issues where we have to do a remodel. And so I'm very worried about what this means to our construction projects. The least of which I worry about right now are our new buildings. That's not to say that we shouldn't be wondering how the coronavirus, when it's in full bloom, well, that will do to our construction, all of our construction projects, including our new ones.
And then, so it has been reported as of today that that community spread does exist in South Dakota. What precautions or measures is the district taking to prepare for that possibility here locally?
What is the school district's response to that? What are we doing to limit that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. Well, the first thing I'd say is we're not having 24,000 kids come to school. we're not having the majority of 3,400 employees come to work. So that's one thing that we're doing. The second thing that we're doing is for the workforce that is coming to work, we're saying that except for essential personnel, don't come to work. We're asking people to stay home. We're also asking supervisors daily to take a look at those folks coming to work and ask yourself, can they perform their duties at home, at least short term, or at least from time to time. And so we're trying to do our best in that regard. We have cleaned our buildings again last week. I would hate to say a deep clean because I think that implies that we weren't doing that before, and I believe we were. But last week it gave us uninterrupted time, students and staff in the building, to be able to do that, maybe in a more comprehensive level than what we had done it before. But that's one of the things that we're doing as well. And another thing, Shelley, that I would reiterate is what I said earlier. We're prepared to extend our time away from school. As soon as tonight, I'm prepared to extend our time more than a week at a time. But I want to see if the government puts anything out yet this afternoon before I do that.
So as of right now,
the governor is announcing her plan at 3:30, just so everyone knows.
Okay. So as of now, you're preparing till further notice, because that's how the board plans to act tonight at the school board meeting. If the governor announces something at 3:30, you would just follow what the governor would say, whether it's a week or 2 weeks or indefinitely.
I would tell you that we would go longer than a week I shouldn't say that, but I already did. We've got a plan in place. We want to make sure that the governor has the first opportunity to address the issue. If the governor has a plan in place that we think is, first of all, I think the governor will have a plan in place that's good in general for the state of South Dakota. If we think we need to do something differently as a school district, in addition to what the governor has done, we're prepared to do that.
Hey, Dr. Maher. This is Carlene Wild with Dakota News Now. I'm just curious, what is the biggest challenge or concern you're hearing from parents at this point? Is there anything new on that front?
You know, at this point, I think what we're hearing, generally speaking, is very positive feedback on what's going on. But, you know, as parents, they're navigating a new area as well. Not that they're taking care of kids, that's not new to them, but not having their kids in school, for extended periods of time in March, that is new. So we're doing our best to try to help parents develop not only a plan for an extended school stoppage, but also now for what does the delivery of education look like during that extended stoppage. So we're trying to provide as many resources as we can for parents. That's not to say that we don't get questions about what if this or what if that. But I would tell you that except for in a couple of rare instances, we've had tremendous support from our families in the Sioux Falls School District. And the other thing I'd say, if there's a frustration, whether it's mom and dad or school superintendent, it's how darn long is this going to last? It's the unknown of, are we in it for a week or are we in it for 3 months? Because we can stand on our head for a long time, as long as we know how long we have to stand on our head. Right now we don't know, so the top of my head's starting to hurt.
Yeah. I have one other question. Just if you can clarify, it sounds like meals and help with the food security is going out in the buses as well as the supplies. Is that going specifically to each school and the principal to figure out how to distribute, or will we see buses going to different neighborhoods to drop off, kits and packets and technology or whatever it is, in addition to potentially the food?
Yep. Last week we made that decision to expand what we already had in place for food distribution, and that food distribution last week was 6 buildings. Going forward this week, that is those same 6 buildings, but also we will utilize our buses to transport resources, food being one of those resources, to neighborhoods. And that'll largely be to schools where principals will help us get into areas that are the most food insecure in our community. I would also tell you that today alone we have put out over 1,200 meals going forward, and last week, our total last week was 6,000. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of where we're headed. Are there any other questions? Did I accidentally hang up on everybody?
No, sir,
I don't think so.
Here.
Okay. You had me worried there for a second. Are there any other questions?
No, I don't think so. Not for me.
No, thanks for your time.
You bet. Thanks, everybody. We'll do this again.